Hi, folks. This is Dr. Rob Cywes. I am the carb addiction doc. And as you know, I don't shy away from controversy. Yeah, there's my word. I don't shy away from being controversial because I really want to make you think. And today's video is going to be about micronutrients and supplements. And, it's interesting. We've gone through this whole COVID era, and a lot of people look to the internet for what should we do about COVID. And during the COVID era, we came across a whole bunch of zincs and magnesiums and ivermectins and a whole bunch of different minerals, vitamins, trace elements, and everybody on the internet had some protocol that they were using to prevent or reduce the impact of COVID. And so a lot of you started taking supplements because of COVID. And a lot of you were probably taking supplements beforehand. So today's video is really going to discuss two parts. Briefly, I'm going to discuss my general philosophy towards supplements. And then secondly, we're going to talk about, okay, how do we manage them? Where do we get them from? And how do we do that? So my first general statement about supplements is I come from Africa. And I can assure you, when you walk around on the plains of Africa, if you go and look behind the third bush on the left, there's not a GNC or a vitamin shop for people that live on the plains of Africa so that they don't die of vitamin deficiency. That is absolute BS. And the other interesting little piece of information is that a good friend of mine, Ivor Cummins, C-U-M-M-I-N-S, great Irishman, very controversial. But Ivor just did a brilliant video. He's called The Fat Emperor, for those of you who don't know him. Did a brilliant video, and if you look in the show notes, the link to the video is going to be there, where he did a historical review of a couple of Canadians of Scandinavian descent who, for over the course of 14 years, lived up in the North Pole, spent a lot of time up in the North Pole, and basically lived on a carnivore diet. They came back to New York, this is circa 1928 to 1930, and for 1 year, they only ate a carnivore diet with no supplementation. And they were studied, and they showed absolutely no nutrient deficiency, no scurvy, no nutrient deficiency. So we have a group of people who basically ate a pure carnivore diet before a whole variety of supplements were available, but they did not even supplement with fruits or vegetables. That was the order of the day because of the scurvy era. And but they ate meat, they ate a broad variety of meat, and we're going to discuss that in detail. So I think that we have become very carried away with supplementation. And my perspective of supplementation is opposite to a lot of what you're going to hear on the internet. On the internet, the majority of people selling supplements create, in very animated ways, in very believable ways, a fear of scarcity, a fear that if you don't do something, something awful is going to happen, or alternatively, with a whole aging and longevity thing, they're selling supplements that are supposed to make you live longer, feel wonderful, be brilliant. In other words, they're offering you something better. They're offering you better health, better aging, better quality of life. That's bullshit. That's absolute crap garbage. There is nothing that can make us live longer and better. Certainly nothing in a pill form that is going to magically adhere to what they're telling you. The primary role of supplements, folks, is to make up deficits. If you are deficient in a particular substance, and it's been measured, and it's been calculated, then by all means supplement to that, with one, maybe two caveats. But the role of supplements, the role of minerals, vitamins, and trace elements is not to make you super better. The role is to make up deficiencies. And what these folks, what Ivor Cummins' Beautiful, beautiful video shows. It's an 11-minute video. I urge all of you to watch it. But what that video shows is that it's perfectly fine to be extremely healthy, healthier than the people that were studying these guys, on a pure carnivore diet without any supplementation. Think that one through. Okay. Now, let's talk about what these folks then did, because if you're not going to supplement with a bunch of pills and capsules and tablets and potions and powders and magic, then we have to get everything we need to not have deficiencies. We have to take everything we need in our diet. So how do we construct that diet? Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that all of these folks that are pushing a plant-based diet are creating, by definition, micronutrient deficits and actually macronutrient deficits. Deficits of adequate fat and deficits of protein. Very difficult to make that up on a plant-based diet, but definitely, absolutely 100% deficits of minerals, vitamins, trace elements, micronutrients. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, human beings lack the capacity. No matter how much of a Rottweiler you are, we lack the capacity to eat adequate amounts of vegetables and fruit to make up those micronutrient deficiencies. They're just not there in adequate concentration, and we cannot eat the volume and in the frequency that's required to make that up from a plant-based diet. That's number one. So vegans, by definition, are all micro and macronutrient deficient. Doesn't mean they're going to die suddenly, no. But they certainly have diseases of micronutrient deficiency that subtract from how long they are destined to live. Certainly people on the standard American diet or the Eat Well diet in the UK or some similar carb-laden diet are going to have the same issue. But here's what's interesting. So the vegans are actually pretty healthy. They're pretty healthy. They typically, the green vegans will not have insulin resistance. Metabolically, they're pretty healthy, but they suffer from micronutrient and macronutrient deficiency. So the primary diseases for them are deficiency diseases. People on the standard American diet, which is a carbohydrate, processed food rich diet, don't suffer necessarily from micronutrient deficiency. They don't suffer necessarily from the majority of micronutrient deficiencies. What they have, however, is a ridiculous demand. So supply in their crappy diet does not meet demand. And that, folks, is where the majority of the artificial supplement industry, the pill form supplement industry, is geared to supplement folks who are getting a decent amount in their diet, but their demand supersedes their supply in their diet. That's what the supplement industry is there for. What do I mean by that? Well, when you are on a high carbohydrate diet, which is basically an insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemic diet, a pro-inflammatory diet, a diet that causes inflammation. When you are dealing with global inflammation in your body, from your hair to the tips of your toes, to your toenails, and everything in between, that inflammatory process ramps all of your metabolic pathways up and pushes them in a singular direction. Instead of the ebb and flow of healthy homeostasis, you've got flatlining, you've got directions, you've got ramped up, your metabolic rate is everything is ramped up. And therefore your need for micronutrients is way in excess of what a crappy diet can supply. So the problem is not adequacy in your diet. The problem is inadequacy because of the spend, because of how much you're churning through. You may, the way it works is you may have a very good salary, you may earn a ton of money, but if you're gambling all that money away, if you're pissing all that money away, no matter how great your income is, your spend is greater than your income. And that, folks, is why the majority of Americans on a standard American diet need the supplements and vitamins and minerals that they need. Because they need a supplemental income to deal with the rates of spend because of inflammation. And even then, it doesn't diminish the inflammation. It just helps to make it manageable, but they're still going to die of those diseases. So now let's flip across to our space, the ketogenic space. And at first, it's reasonable to supplement. But over time, what happens is two things. Two very important considerations. Number one, very, very rapidly, as you get into ketosis, and certainly by the time you're fat adapted, your immune system is very calm. We measure that on the blood work. Your immune system is nice and stable. It's not ramped up. So when your immune system is kind of asleep, all the soldiers are in their barracks because they're not fighting any wars. They're ready to go. But there's no action. It's not a battleground state. Your biology is nice and quiescent. The systems are working well. You're in homeostasis. What goes up comes down. And everything's working appropriately. Well, folks, then your demand is way down. So let's say if you're living within your means, you've got a decent salary, good salary, but you're not pissing away your money on Amazon, on shopping, on gambling, on all the other things. You live a small life, you live within your means, you go outside, you're in nature, you don't spend that much money. Yes, there's a certain spend, but your income more than adequately makes up for it. And in fact, you're able to store some money in the bank. That's a ketogenic diet. So you don't need all these supplements and crap because you're getting it from your diet. We'll talk about that in a second. And you don't use that much. So if your utilization, if your demand is down, then your diet is adequate in terms of supplying that. And the way to bring your demand down is to treat your hyperinsulinemia, to treat your insulin resistance, whether you're diabesogenic or obesogenic. And when you remove carbohydrates from your diet, your demand goes way down, and your diet can then keep pace and actually have enough to store. And we measure those stores. We measure them on the blood work. So under those circumstances, your need for supplements, vitamins, minerals, trace elements goes down when you're on an anti-inflammatory diet. Now, let's look at the anti-inflammatory diet, because obviously you have some needs, you gotta have some income. So how do we make sure that that income is good? In other words, when you look at those guys that were living, the Scandinavian Canadians that were living on a carnivore diet, let's look at what they ate and where those micronutrients came from. And this is important. When you're looking at a keto carnivore diet, forget about the vegetables in terms of their value for micronutrients. They really don't carry adequate. They can have minor roles in minerals and vitamins, but they don't have adequate. So therefore, if you are going to be on the healthiest micronutrient diet, there are 4 elements, primarily from the animal-based side of your diet, the plant-free side of the diet, that are going to make up, bang for buck, the micronutrients you need. Number one, and if you can do at least 2 of these 4, we're probably going to be good enough. Most of them involve whole animals, whole organs. The first one, eggs. Eggs. Eggs are a wonderful source of macro and micronutrients, but particular micronutrients in the right proportions. Remember, an egg becomes a chicken. The only thing that's missing from an egg is calcium. So my friend Ken Berry has a great way of powdering, heating up in the oven, and then powdering the calcium in the shell. If you want to do that, that's a great source of calcium. There are other sources that we're going to discuss. But eggs are a wonderful source of everything. The other thing that eggs don't have in them is vitamin C. But vitamin C is present in the other foods we're going to talk about and is not necessary if you are on a carnivore diet that has a range and you don't overcook your food, which is something I learned from Ira Cummins. If you don't overcook your food, you don't destroy the vitamin C and you don't get scurvy. So eggs, number 1. Number 2, dairy. Oh, dairy's so bad for me. Bullshit. No mammal exists without dairy. Dairy has everything in it that you need in the right proportions. Saturated fat, polyunsaturated fat, protein, a little bit of carbohydrate to trigger insulin, and all the minerals and vitamins that you need. It actually even has a few things like odd-chain fatty acids, which we don't even know what they do, but they must be necessary. So dairy is a very important thing. And my family is fairly heavily into dairy, particularly my growing son. And I'll tolerate a little bit of excess weight because of the value of dairy. And I'll argue with anybody about that anytime. Bring it. But dairy is incredibly valuable for all the micronutrients. And because we exist as a species due to it, yes, you can get allergic reactions, but primarily to the protein in dairy. But for the most part, that complements eggs, brings all the calcium that you need, and is incredibly healthy. The stupid ass thing that we did with dairy is we pasteurized it, which I understand. I don't have an issue with pasteurization, given the smallpox or the cowpox crossover. However, when we fat reduced dairy because we were afraid of the fat in dairy, that's stupid. So if you're able to access raw dairy or full cream dairy, which we can't get here adequately in the US, that is the healthiest dairy. Okay, but dairy is one of the best sources of micronutrients. The third category, and everyone goes ballistic with all the organs. The rest of the organs are just muscles. The rest of the organs don't matter that much. The primary organ that matters is liver. And liver metabolically has a number of micronutrients, minerals, vitamins, trace elements that we need in a very healthy proportion. Now, a lot of people don't like to eat liver. But if you eat ground beef, you can mush the liver up in the ground beef and use it as a condiment. I wouldn't necessarily spend money on pills and tablets. You can certainly do that. But the liver is a very valuable source of minerals, vitamins, trace elements, and is a great complement to what we're eating. Remember, every time you eat an egg, though, you're eating a whole chicken's liver. So there's plenty in there. And then the final one are small fish, which is where you're eating it's not so much about the size of the fish, but it's where you're eating the majority of fish. You're eating the skin, you're eating the bones, you're eating pretty much everything. If you eat a sardine, anchovies, herring, that kind of thing, and shellfish. Now, the particular shellfish are going to be your oysters, your mussels, where you're eating the whole animal except perhaps the shell. Clams, shrimp, those are fine, but they are deficient in a lot of the other parts of the animal. So those are the four. And if you're eating those four, you can eat them as meals, but you can also eat them as condiments together with your food. If I eat a hamburger, there's going to be liver in my hamburger. There may be a slice of cheese and a fried egg on that hamburger. There are ways that I can add, even when I do fish sometimes. We did some codfish the other day. I took some cheese and some eggs and I made a sauce for it, and I was able to grill that in the fish and the egg sauce instead of a batter. So there are ways you can add the various micronutrient condiments to your food, and you don't need a lot. You don't need a lot if you're metabolically healthy. So if your metabolic system is vibrational, if it's really so in balance that it's just vibrating along very nicely and you don't have a lot of inflammation, you don't need a huge amount. Then the final condiment that is essential to add to your food, the final condiment that is essential to add to your food is salt. And whether you use a salt with a variety of magnesiums and calciums and potassiums in it, or you use pure sodium chloride, salt should accompany every meal. That's the other essential micronutrient. And don't let anyone tell you it's going to affect your blood pressure. So salt, eggs, cheese, liver, small fish, sardines, those things are the ideal complements. And of course, you're going to get adequate protein and fat in. So in summary, folks, we don't need to supplement. Now, what do I take? The only supplements I personally take, I take fish oil. I probably have a deficiency. Remember, the only reason to supplement is to make up for deficiency. I probably have a deficiency of 3 omega fatty acids in my diet. I try to eat as much small fish as I can, oysters and mussels and sardines. However, I also have a strong family history of Alzheimer's. My mom's busy dying of it. My grandmother died of it. I know that I've got the ApoE4 gene. I am probably going to die of Alzheimer's. So I supplement with fish oil. And if ever I've got a cold, if ever I'm traveling, I will use an 81 milligram aspirin. I consider that to be a supplement to calm down the risk of clotting when my immune system is affected or I've got stasis in my legs. Other than that, and you can see the picture of my supplements, I take nothing. Oh, but your vitamin D. You know what? Sunshine, there's my supplement. Food, there's my supplement. I don't need those other things. And my blood work says so. So we can check your blood work. We can make sure that we're okay on the supplements. But supplement to deficiency. Don't supplement to be superhuman. And I know that's going to affect a lot of you. Leave comments. Leave comments. But remember, if you are on a low inflammatory diet and the measures of inflammation in your body have been stabilized and you've reversed hyperinsulinemia, you've reversed insulin resistance on a ketogenic diet, and you're fasting, and your body is homeostatically normal, you don't need anything. I hope this makes you think. I hope it pisses off a lot of our people that, oh, you must take supplements, all the supplement providers. But they're preying on you for the most part. Early on, during the therapeutic phase, take the supplements you need, but slowly wean yourself off them. I am the Carb Addiction Doc. Please leave comments. I know this was a controversial video, but how did we ever exist as a species without that GNC behind the third bush on the right, on the flat plains of Africa? I'll see you next time.